Hi everyone and welcome to Book Boop. My name is Rachel and today I have another standalone recommendations video for you. Today I'm going to give you some adult book recommendations. So I haven't read as many adult books, maybe within the past year or so is when I've actually started to get more into kind of the adult genre or age range. But all of these I really loved reading. They were so great. Some of them may not be a big surprise to you. Some of them have been around on BookTube quite a bit, but maybe some of them you haven't heard of before. So let's go ahead and jump in. I have my notes I'm going to be referring to just to make sure I don't forget any of the books, and some of the books I don't have physically, so I will hold up my Kindle like for this first one to show you the picture because some of the covers are gorgeous and that way you can track what book I am talking about. The first one I'm talking about is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. First of all, this is one of the prettiest covers I have ever seen. It is so gorgeous. It's got this Alice in Wonderland vibe that I just love, and it's actually a really recent release. It just came out here in 2021. In this story, it kind of jumps back and forth between two timelines in the past and the present. Mainly, we are following this apothecary that was in the 1800s or early 1900s that specifically helped take care of women and their ailments. And it ended up developing into a little bit of a darker type of apothecary to where, yes, you could go there for things for ailments, but also it was a place where women could actually purchase poisons to off men who either were being abusive or hurtful towards them, or they were trapped in difficult situations and they needed to get out. Specifically, the rule for this apothecary, the person that owned it, her rule was that it always had to be used against men. It could never be used against another woman. And she also had a book where she had to write down the name of the person that purchased the poison and who they used the poison on. And so they had this log of people that she kept with all the lists. So we've got that going on. That was kind of the main storyline, one of the things we follow. But then present day, we also follow a woman who is vacationing in London, and she actually ends up finding an old bottle from this apothecary and kind of falls down the rabbit hole. I'm just going to say that because of the cover. Kind of falls down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out where this bottle was from and the story behind it, and it kind of mashes up together, jumping back and forth, learning about this apothecary. It ended up having a lot more of a mystery and almost even slightly thriller aspects to it, and it ended up being fantastic. I loved the jumping back and forth between the two perspectives. It moves very quickly, and I was really intrigued the whole time. So I absolutely loved this book. I thought it was so much fun. So I highly recommend it if you are interested in something that's kind of like a historical fiction, kind of mashed up with present day. It was a good time. All right, so this next one is one I guarantee you probably have heard of because it has legitimately been everywhere. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to see if I can find the cover. There it is. If you haven't heard of this one, then you haven't been around BookTube very much, and that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This is what many people have said, and it is honestly true. It's like middle grade for adults. It's written like a middle grade. It has such a whimsical, heartwarming just story and style to it, and it's just so fantastic. So if you want a book that's going to give you warm fuzzies, I highly recommend this one. In this story, we are following this guy who is a caseworker specifically for orphanages and foster homes that take care of children that have magical abilities. So he goes to these different orphanages and makes sure that these kids are being well taken care of, and sometimes he has to shut orphanages down because they're just not doing a very good job taking care of his kids. One day he gets a job to go and to check out this house. That's the house in the Cerulean Sea. It's actually placed on an island, and he's told that this particular orphanage is housing very dangerous children with dangerous powers that could come up with the end of the world, like could make the end of the world happen. And so he's a little bit afraid, but he's gonna do his job, and he goes, and while he's there, he ends up getting to know these kids, and they're just not what they seem, in that the world keeps telling them because of their abilities and what they are, that they should be monsters, but they're just kids, and it's just really sweet. I love the story and the friendship that develops between the caseworker and the man that runs the orphanage, and it's just such a heartwarming story, and it's beautiful. I love these kids' characters. They're so fantastic. So if you want something that's nice and heartwarming and just has some adult themes in it, but also is written very much like a middle grade and is very whimsical, highly recommend this one. It is so much fun. It's definitely worth it. All right, next, let's go into some more like thrillers and kind of creepy-ish books. This one I absolutely loved, and I'm hoping to get a physical copy someday. And it is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This one sounds like something that I would love, and it did end up being something I would love because it's about a haunted house. It's my favorite thing. I love it. So, all right, in this story, we were following this woman, and her father, he had written a book about a house that they very briefly lived in for like a month. And this house ended up being crazy haunted, and it terrified them to the point where they actually ran out of the house in the middle of the night, never to return. He ended up writing a book about his experiences, and that book ended up becoming a huge bestseller and just like a huge deal. And to the point where this girl, she was young when she was living in this house for that very brief time, so she doesn't really remember what happened when they stayed in the home, and she often questions whether or not her father is lying. She just doesn't think that all these supernatural things that she read in her father's book actually happened while she was there. But her father never confesses, never says whether or not it was a lie. And after her father passes away, this happens in the very, very beginning of the book, after her father passes away, he actually gives the house to her, which she didn't even know her father still owned the home, so that was shocking. So the home is bequeathed to her, and she decides that she's actually going to go, she's going to fix the house up and sell it, get it out of her life. And that's one of the things that she actually does for a living, is she actually flips homes. And she's like, okay, I'm going to go, I'm going to fix up this house, I'm going to sell it and get out of my life. On top of that, she's like, while I'm doing that, I'm also going to do some research and see if I can figure out whether these things that my father said happened actually happened. And it was so much fun. It had nice spooks. It was very thrillery. I really loved it. I feel like this is the type of book that actually has a good reread value to it. Some thrillers, a lot of times you read them and they're fun at the time, but you're not really going to be able to read them again because of the fact that now you know what's coming. But in this one, I feel like you can kind of get hints of things that you wouldn't have gotten before if you were to reread it. So I think it's great rereadability, nice and spooky, but it's not too spooky. That's the thing. It's not overly terrifying. It's not super bloody gory or anything like that. So if you're thinking this is like a horror movie, it's not a horror movie. So if you're a little bit scared about jumping to something that's spooky, this one's not too intense, but it just gives you some hints and some spookiness and like an old dark manor, little haunted vibe. So highly recommend this one. Let's keep on the Riley Sager train. I actually have this one, and it's Lock Every Door, also by Riley Sager. This is another mystery thriller that was a lot of fun to read, and I actually recommended this one to a friend of mine to help her get out of a reading slump, and it really helped her because it's fast-paced and it's thrilling. It's the intention of it. In this story, we were following this woman who is down and out on her luck. She has recently broken up with her boyfriend and is no longer living with him. She's crashing on the couch of her best friend, and she's recently lost her job as well, and she just is stuck. She's stuck. And then in the newspaper, she ends up seeing an advertisement to be an apartment sitter in this really fancy high-rise apartment complex that is in New York. And she's heard of this complex before. It's the kind of place where famous people would live, but people aren't like normally let inside the building. It's a very secretive place. But in this advertisement, it says that they are willing to pay top dollar for someone to stay in the apartment and to apartment sit. So she's like, okay, I'm going to look into it. So she went and she has an interview for it, and she comes to find out that she's going to be paid a lot of money to apartment sit. However, there are some rules that she has to follow. Like she's not allowed to have people over, which to me makes sense. She's not allowed to have friends and things over into the apartment. She also needs to stay there every night, and she's not allowed to leave at night, I think. And there's some other rules that seem a little bit weird, but the money is so good, right? So she's like, okay, I'm going to stay. I'm going to do this until I get back on my feet. So she ends up staying there. While she's there, some strange things start happening in this apartment complex, in this apartment building. And just some weird stuff starts to go down, and it gets creepy. And there you go. I'm not going to tell you more than that because I don't want to spoil anything, but I really, really loved this. I thought it was so fun. It had a nice spook factor to it, nice and twisty-turny. So again, if you're looking for another good thriller, I highly recommend this one. I'm hoping to read some more Riley Sager in the future because I really like Riley Sager's work so far. All right, let's delve into a different realm. This one is so far outside of my normal like type of book that I read, but I really, really enjoyed it. And that is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one probably is also very familiar to you as well, but if it's not, I'll let you know what this is about. So in this story, we are following this fictionalized band. So this is like a historical fiction that is in the 60s into the 70s called Daisy Jones and the Six. And we are following their rise to fame, and then all of a sudden the band breaks up at the height of their fame and just kind of like fades into oblivion. And the whole thing is like, what happened to the band? Why did the band break up? Nobody really knows, until one day Daisy ends up kind of like telling her story, and they end up having kind of like this culmination of like, I'm not making sense. This book is an interview format, and it's an interview with all the different band members and everything, and it's kind of like a documentary style feel, and we learn what happened to this band and why they ended up breaking up, and it was so much fun. It was so immersive. I had a blast. Personally, I read it physically. I have heard that the audiobook is fantastic. I've heard it's full cast and just so good. I'm hoping to listen to it on audiobook one day. But I did read the physical copy and really enjoyed that as well. I really enjoyed the interview format. I kept it fast paced. I really loved all these characters, and they felt so real. That's the thing. After the end of this book, I felt like they were a real band. I wanted to look up the songs that were mentioned in the book. I wanted to see the iconic album cover that they had that was described in the book. Like, I wanted to see these things, and they felt real, which that's a really incredible feat, to have a book or historical fiction that makes you feel like these people are legitimately real and all this stuff legitimately happened. So highly recommend. Even if this isn't normally your style of book, I think you should give it a try, because I tried it and I really liked it, and it was just a lot of fun. So, and I think it would be a really good summer read. Just sort of like a 60s, 70s rock band thing, you know, sex, drugs, rock and roll kind of situation. I feel like that's a good summer vibe for some reason. It just makes me think of Woodstock or something. All right, I got 3 more for you. This next one is a little bit out of left field. I'm pretty positive is considered an adult book, and that is Lost Boy by Christina Henry. Christina Henry usually writes a lot of retellings for different kind of classic tales, and this one is Peter Pan. However, this takes a little bit of an angle with it, to where, what if Captain Hook used to be a lost boy and was Peter Pan's best friend? What happened? Oh my goodness, you guys. I loved this so much. I don't have to say much more than that other than that premise. It's fantastic. I love seeing kind of like how Captain Hook's created. It's like this origin story thing. Peter Pan is absolutely terrifying in this book. I don't want to spoil anything and say like how Neverland's a little bit different and how Peter Pan's different, but this is a very like dark retelling perspective of Peter Pan. And I had a blast with it. It was awesome. I loved it. It's fast paced, it's creepy, it's bloody, it's great. I really liked it a lot. So if you're a fan of Peter Pan, fairy tales, you like retellings, and you like villain origin stories, you should give this a try. It was a lot of fun. Okay, 2 more for you. Let's delve back into a thriller thing, and then I will talk about one of my favorite adult fiction books pretty much ever. It's just so good. All right. What am I looking for? I blanked out for a second. Okay, this is another thriller that I actually really, really enjoyed. I think this is the first thriller that I actually tried, first adult thriller, and it's The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I apologize if I'm saying that so incorrectly. This story was fascinating. There was a point in this book where I had to set it aside, and I just stared at the ceiling and went, what? Because there was just so many twists and turns in this that I was not expecting, and just like hurt my brain, to be honest. In this story, we're following this woman who is a famous painter, and her husband is a famous photographer, if I'm remembering correctly. One day, I mean, they have like this seemingly very, very happy marriage, and one day she ends up shooting her husband, murdering him. I think she shoots him several times, and then she goes mute. And she's put into a facility, and no one's been able to get her to talk. They can't figure out why did she kill her husband? Like, what happened? Nobody knows. And it's this whole thing where we're following this psychiatrist who wants to make it his mission to get her to talk, to get her to say what happened, why she did this. And that's what this book is about. We're following the psychiatrist who is trying to get her to talk and find out what happened. And obviously it's a thriller, so there's lots of mysteries and things that kind of occur, just like finding out what happened in her life and all those things. So it was really good. Again, lots of twists and turns I didn't expect. Really enjoyed it a lot. He actually just had another book just come out, I think here in June in 2021. I'm waiting to kind of see some reviews on it first to see like, because it's a premise that I'm not overly interested in, but if people are raving about it, then I'll read it. Because this originally wasn't something I was overly interested in either. But one of my friends read it and was like, you have to read this. So I'm glad I did. So if you want another thriller, there's another one. Okay, very last book I'm going to talk about. This is probably one you have heard of as well, and I absolutely loved it. This is probably, I would say maybe one of my very first kind of like adult fiction books that I read. And that's The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. You guys, this is the most magical book. I love it so much. It's so atmospheric. This gives me vibes of like a fall festival, right? You go, you got the leaves like blowing in the wind and crunching under your feet, and you smell caramel apples and frying nuts and popcorn, and you're just walking through a fair or a circuit. Like, you guys, that's what it gives me the vibes of. So in this story, we are following two magicians, and they are kind of trapped in this, they're kind of trapped in this thing where they have to battle to the death between each other with their magic. And the location that they're doing this is at this circus called the Night Circus. It doesn't, now originally when I read that premise, I was like, okay, I thought it was going to be more like dueling it out against each other, like face to face. It's actually not like that. The Night Circus, this circus is their stage. So each of them is responsible for creating different types of experiences that people would have when they go. So maybe one of the magicians will create this tent, and inside it is they create like this magical place and do like have all these magical things inside it. So illusions, kind of like creating these beautiful illusions that are actually magic, but people think they're illusions, and kind of wowing the crowd basically. It was so magical, and it's all about this circus that's traveling. There's like this following behind it. They never advertise where they're going to be. They just pop up at night. They're only open at night, and it just sort of like pops up, they're there, and then poof, they're gone. And it's just this very magical circus. I feel like I'm explaining it horribly, but my goodness, it's so good. It's so good. It's Erin Morgenstern. Erin Morgenstern is a queen of creating a very engrossing atmosphere. It's lovely. It's just very artfully written. So highly recommend. Personally, I recommend reading this in the fall because again, it gives you those sort of like fall festival vibes, just the feel of the circus. There's so much explanation of like the food and the smells and the feel, and it's impeccable. So highly recommend that one as well. All right, so those are all of my adult standalone recommendations. Again, I don't have like that many of them right now, and a lot of these you probably have heard of or maybe have read already. If you have, let me know down below what you think about them, but also help me out and help out the viewers, and down below maybe mention some adult standalones that you really love, just to kind of keep that train going of some recommendations. But I hope you enjoyed this video. On this side of the video over here is my logo. If you click on that, you can subscribe to my channel, follow me on my book journey. I would love to have you here, and please say hi down below so I can meet you. On this side of the video over here is a suggestion for another video if you want to watch another one right now. But thank you so much for watching. You rock, and don't forget to keep reading. Bye!